參加我哋今日呢個活動嘅朋友仔，你哋好啦，好多謝你哋今日咧會過嚟參與我哋嘅活動嘅。咁我哋今日嘅活動嘅，我哋今日講座嘅主題咧就係應對海洋塑膠與藝術、人文和科學嘅對話。咁我哋今日就非常之開心，可以邀請到項目發起人胡家明教授，同埋中大嘅同事啦，亦都係珊瑚學院嘅發起人崔佩儀教授，就係過嚟幫我哋做一個分享嘅。不如就由我嚟簡單講解一下，我哋今次呢個講座嘅少少背景啦。咁大家見到咧，而家呢一個咁靚嘅藍色嘅海報咧，佢就係我哋喺2023年2月份嘅時候，就係有中大 SDG Action Fund 嘅一個支持之下咧，就喺大埔元洲仔做咗一個淨灘嘅活動嘅。咁我哋嗰次嘅活動咧，就係有2個導師過嚟幫我哋，一個咧就係即係如果有關深海淨灘嘅朋友仔，可能都會認識嘅，就係叫大便妹。咁佢就喺香港嗰度做淨灘做咗10年㗎啦，咁樣。係啦，大便妹係咪？佢就係幫我喺香港度做淨灘做咗10年咁耐啦。咁就有好豐富嘅經驗，同埋咧，如果你 follow 佢嘅 IG 咧，你會見到佢係會一路記錄翻佢執到啲咩塑膠，做翻個指示，同埋用過一啲嘅塑膠垃圾去講一個故仔嘅。而另外一個導師咧，就係香港嘅 artist Michael Leung，咁佢就係參與，即係佢會同班同學仔一齊參與淨灘啦，然後就帶領同學仔咧一齊喺即場用發揮一啲創意嘅意念去做咗個 social sculpture 出嚟。咁中間咧係有好多 conversation 嘅機會嘅。咁嗰個 social sculpture 嘅意念咧，其實都係諗住透過淨灘呢個活動啦，就唔係淨係人同海洋嘅一個交流同埋連結，而係咧人同人之間係經歷咗一次淨灘之後咧，都係可以有更加多嘅對話，同埋就住即係 base on佢哋嘅經驗咧，可以係一齊去就住大家嘅交流，係即場發揮做一啲嘢出嚟嘅。咁一陣間我哋會有我哋參與活動嘅同學仔 Andy 去幫我哋做翻一個分享嘅。咁麻煩 Lucas 幫我上翻1-2版去計劃發起。係我哋今日嘅活動流程咧，就係係啦，而家就係會首先我嚟到簡單介紹一下我哋成個 project 嘅一啲 background 啦，跟住就係會由項目計劃發起人胡家明教授就去分享翻計劃嘅緣起同埋初衷。然之後就係崔佩儀教授，就係中大生命科學學院嘅，就會介紹翻佢一路非常之專注同埋投入好多熱誠去做嘅海洋生態保育嘅工作。咁然後就係我哋嘅同學仔 Andy 去做一個分享啦。最後咧，我哋會有一啲少少 open floor 嘅時間俾大家做一個問答環節嘅。咁我哋今日嘅活動係廣東話進行。咁如果需要嘅話咧，其實你哋都係可以同我哋講啦。咁我哋係設有一個英語嘅即時傳譯係可以提供翻俾你。咁我哋今次嘅係啊，係啦，我再簡單介紹少少咧，就係我哋呢一個 SDG 嘅項目咧，即係如果係啦，我哋呢個 SDG 嘅項目咧，就係由2個研究中心合作一齊去組織出嚟噶啦，就係社會創新研究中心同埋文化研究中心。咁係啦，然後亦都非常之多謝咧崔佩儀教授今次都會加入我哋一齊去做個分享。今次嘅講座嘅其中一個主辦單位都係珊瑚學院，大家感興趣嘅話咧，都可以去珊瑚學院嘅網頁嗰度去瀏覽同埋認識多一啲嘅。咁一間崔佩儀教授就會介紹多一啲噶啦。咁然後我哋今次活動背後嘅資助方就係中大嘅 Sustainable Development Goals Action Fund 嘅。咁如果同學仔有興趣嘅話咧，都可以去翻佢哋嘅 Facebook 同埋 IG 留意翻，佢哋係俾好多 support 俾中大嘅同埋同事去即係自發做一啲關於 sustainable development 嘅一啲活動嘅。咁然後我哋今次嘅項目咧，Lucas 如果方便嘅，可唔可以開一開個 pad 咧？係啊，我哋今次嘅活動咧就係去計劃時間表嗰度。唔該，咁我哋今次嘅項目咧，啱啱都有講到啦，就係由2月份嘅 2月份嗰陣開始就係做咗個淨灘嘅活動啦，連埋 social sculpture 嘅創作。咁跟住中間咧，我哋就係有一啲資料整理嘅環節，即係資料整理嘅時間啦。咁一間Professor Wu 咧就會再分享多啲，我哋就係將我哋成個活動嘅經驗整理做文字同埋圖像，就擺咗上去一個 online 嘅 platform 叫做 Padlet。咁大家一間就會有機會可以睇多啲嘅。咁我哋今次淨灘咧，亦都係承接翻我哋兩個研究中心，尤其是係社會創新研究中心，有關於 plastic pollution 嘅一啲嘅關注嘅。咁而家大家睇到嘅呢個 Padlet 咧，就係我哋項目人員同埋一啲幫手嘅，即係參與項目嘅同學仔啦，就係幫我哋好好咁樣整理咗啲資料。咁係啦。咁就係一個 open 嘅 online platform，大家都可以隨時去睇啦，同埋拎去用嘅。因為我哋都希望咧，我哋做咗嘅嘢係可以越嚟越多人知道啦，同埋佢哋都可以 base on 我哋做咗嘅嘢咧，再有更加多嘅累積同埋推廣嘅。咁如果 Lucas 方面可唔可以開一開街市嗰個 Padlet？咁呢啲就係啱啱見到數據啦，我哋活動嘅照片啦。嗱，咁而家開緊嘅咧就係我哋前年嘅，亦都係 SDG Action Fund 支持嘅一個項目，就係喺關於香港嘅濕街市。咁塑膠污染，即係無論淨灘定係喺街市啦，其實我哋其中一個好關注嘅就係塑膠污染。咁喺濕街市入面咧，因為好多時候我哋華人啦，濕街市有啲文化咧，我哋都仲係好習慣用膠袋嘅。但係咧，其實我哋亦都非常之清楚咧，膠袋所帶俾我哋人類文明啦、生態環境啦嘅種種禍害。咁我哋呢一個 SDG 嘅 Action Fund 咧，就支持我哋做咗一個 pilot scheme，就係去香港其中一個街市，就係沙田街市。咁就係前年嘅做嘅活動啦，就係 Lucas 同埋另外一個同事帶咗差唔多20個中大嘅同學去街市嗰度咧，數咗一日係有，即係到底淨係沙田一座街市一日入面係會用咗，即係消耗咗幾多個膠袋咧？咁發現咧都唔少嘅，就係有15000幾啦，淨係一日嘅喎。咁如果我哋想像成翻香港咁多個街市，個數咧就會係非常之大啦。咁我哋亦係啦，而咁啱係啦。咁如果乘翻一日香港當係香港嘅街市數量，其實一日咧係已經過百萬個街市，唔係過百萬個塑料嘅即棄膠袋咧，係已經係消耗咗嘅。咁呢個數字係非常之大啦，絕對有好大嘅空間咧，俾我哋係去用少啲膠袋嘅。咁我哋透過呢一個項目啦，做咗一啲數據出嚟咧，就係draw公眾嘅 attention。其實亦都有喺報章度做過一啲嘅，係啊，寫過發表過一啲文章啦咁樣樣。咁亦都咁啱係 echo 翻而家香港政府嘅一個街市膠袋嘅，即係個購物膠袋徵費計劃嘅上調嘅。咁我哋嚟緊咧，ongoing 呢個係前年嘅 pilot scheme 啦。我哋而家 ongoing 咧都有繼續係做一啲關於街市膠袋嘅一啲研究啦，同埋一啲教育推廣嘅活動嘅。而今次咧，我哋就係拎咗 ECF 嘅 funding，就會入去中學啦，同埋落社區咧做更加多嘅推廣。咁我哋稍後可以再 share 啲 links 俾大家嘅。咁係啦，無論係喺街市啦，係喺淨灘啦，其實我哋嘅着眼點咧都係關於塑膠污染。因為我哋喺街市嗰度，我哋消耗咗嘅膠袋，我哋喺日常生活入面消耗咗嘅膠袋啦嘅塑膠咧，其實咧佢哋就係會深刻經由各種嘅渠道去咗海洋，危及海洋嘅生態，以及咧係後尾亦都係會影響翻我哋人類自身嘅生活啦、健康啦以及文明嘅。咁事不宜遲，我就將我哋講座嘅時間首先交俾胡嘉明教授先啦。
OK， 多謝晒 Teresa。我再一次多謝 Lucas 啦，同埋佢條 team 啦。今日公眾假期都翻咗嚟中大，咁咧多謝 Apple 咧，就係可以同我哋有一個對話。好，咁我其實喺呢個頭先 阿 Teresa 其實講咗好多我哋 CSIS 呢2年以嚟嘅工作啦，其實喺減數嗰方面，試下從一個可唔可以講即係動員啲同學仔一齊去參與啊，或者我哋去認識一個即係去諗一啲源頭去減數嘅一啲嘅空間啊，譬如可能我哋購物嗰陣時候啊咁樣。咁我一陣間都想聽下Apple 嘅諗法嘅，因為我或者再講翻少少，唔係淨係今次呢個計劃緣起，講翻我自己少少我自己嘅 background Apple。咁我係一個人類學家啦，咁大約10年之前就開始喺北京嘅郊區啦，我哋叫城鄉交合區嗰度，咁就去觀察一班拾荒者，其實佢哋係執好多塑膠去做回收嘅咁樣。咁嗰啲塑膠咧，其實係喺北京呢個超大型城市度，喺每一日嘅消費度生產出嚟啦。咁當然嗰啲即係我哋叫大陸名叫寶特瓶啦。咁但係香港可能係嗰啲即係就咁飲水嗰啲樽啊咁樣。咁嗰陣時嗰個回收價咧都幾高。咁所以其實拾荒者城市嘅拾荒者都會好想去收集多啲去換錢啦。咁佢哋，我當時係喺一個我哋叫城鄉交合區嘅，其實好似農村咁嘅地方，一路跟蹤呢一班人咗幾年啦，咁就寫咗一本書嘅。咁我唔知道而家喺個 Padlet 度，小玉揾唔揾到我本書啦？如果揾唔到係唔緊要嘅，唔需要揾嘅啦，唔使。我哋之後可以再 send 翻俾 Apple 嘅。咁我估嗰陣時就係對於我嚟講一個人類學家，我哋好多時從一個文科嘅 background，可能就會諗好多係人類啦、行為啦，但係就少啲去諗我哋叫物件或者非人類嘅物件啦。咁大約10年之前，其實都開始喺人文學科有個關注，就係話，咦，其實我哋開始點樣去諗譬如污染嘅問題咧，從文科去諗污染嘅問題咧，咁樣。咁我估，所以嗰陣時候開始去諗呢樣嘢嗰陣時候，到後來出咗本書啦，出咗本書之後都比較多人去關注，咦，其實人文我哋叫 Arts and Humanities 啦。人文學科好似我哋講 literature 啦，我哋講音樂啦，我哋講藝術啦，或者如果我哋講中大嘅人文學系好出名，係中文科，係講好多即係文本啦。咁我哋文化研究咧就講好多 new media 啊、films 啊咁樣。咁都係從一個人嘅角度去諗嗰啲文化嘅生產嘅。咁但係我哋係咪可以都再諗多一步，就係諗一啲其實係我哋身邊嘅一啲嘅污染物質咧？咁譬如係塑膠。咁所以開始就向咗呢個方向去 explore 啦。咁我都好多謝呢度尤其是 Teresa 啦，同埋係阿 Mars 咧。其實我哋喺 CSIS 就開始去諗好多。咦？咁如果 Arts and Humanities 開始去諗pollution，咁可以點樣諗咧？或者我諗 plastic pollution 可以點樣諗咧？咁所以其實我係想講 my point 就係我哋都係一種嘗試咯。我都想同 Apple 講，因為可能 science 嘅同事或者同學咧就係好 lab 嘅出發嘅，即係可能係攞咗一啲嘢跟住擺喺個 lab 度做研究，係啦。咁或者Apple 嗰種嘅方法咧係稍為我可唔可以講稍為係都多啲 engage 啲唔同嘅同學仔啊！即係我見到你哋潛落水啊，跟住又走去睇下啲珊瑚 BB 會唔會再生啊咁樣。同埋你哋嗰個係一種 test， 即係一路 test 下。我見到你哋可能擺咗啲珊瑚 BB 落去，再睇下佢會唔會喺而家個水域嗰度係點樣。有一種 testing 咁樣。咁但係人文學科點樣去 approach 呢一個點樣 approach 呢一個污染嘅問題咧？咁我自己可唔可以咁講？我其實都係覺得Teresa 啦，其實包括 Lucas 啦， 都係我哋一齊喺度諗緊點樣去試驗呢一樣嘢，從一個即係 Arts and Humanities 嘅方法。咁所以頭先你聽到阿 Teresa 講即係街市，因為街市係一個好 social 嘅 space，即係好多唔同嘅 stakeholders 啦，譬如菜販啦、肉販啦、魚販啦，係啦，跟住我哋會睇到有domestic helper 啦，有家庭主婦啦，有阿公阿婆啦，咁唔同嘅呢啲嘅 social actors，其實佢哋喺個 space 度，除咗買嘢之外，其實佢哋同塑膠污染嘅關係係乜嘢？其實我哋自唔自覺喺每一日嗰種嘅 grocery practice，即係我哋買餸嘅 practice 嗰度，其實係不自覺生產咗好多，譬如你頭先睇到嗰個數字啦，即係一個幾驚人，即係 one day 一日只係香港啫，係啦，我哋係超過100萬，係未計超市喎，係冇計到超市嗰種好多 plastic packaging 咁樣。咁所以嗰個係一個其中嘅嘗試啦。咁跟住，其實上年就係即係 Lucas 同埋阿 Teresa 就諗，喂，不如我哋又再試下諗下，即係除咗喺街市呢個咁 bloody， 我哋叫好 bloody 嘅 space 啊嚇。咁有冇啲冇咁 bloody 嘅 space 咧？咁其實中大喺沙田大埔，我哋阿 Lucas 好犀利，即係揾到圓洲仔呢笪好優美嘅地方，就帶晒啲同學去，帶晒啲同學去，一開始執嗰時就開始觸目驚心啦。就係、哇！嗰啲膠袋係扯出嚟嘅，好大個咁樣嚇。咁同埋即係當然好多其他，我一陣間可以或者阿 Lucas 而家都可以 share 個 pad 嚟睇下，我哋執到啲乜嘢啦咁樣。咁係咧有一樣嘢好得意，我或者喺度都想問下阿 Apple，即係我哋咧要啲同學仔咧落去，或者甚至乎叫阿大便妹啊，讓一齊落去做 beach clean up 咧，淨灘咧。其實咧，好多人好踴躍嘅，好想去參與嘅。可能大家都覺得咧係一件好嘅事嚟嘅。即係大家都覺得我去付出半日嘅勞動，跟住咧我就 I feel better 係啦。咁有一種咁樣嘅感覺嘅。咁但係咧，我哋就想加入一個我哋可唔可以叫做 critical thinking 嘅元素，所以咧就揾咗Michael 係啦，Michael 就係嗰個 artist 啦。咁其實咧，所有同學都好嗰日咧，我可能一陣 Andy 可以再講多少少。其實執完已經好攰啦，就諗住可以收檔啦，就拜拜啦，係啦，因為覺得執咗啦嘛已經。咁點知咧 ，Michael 就叫我哋要對住嗰堆垃圾。但嗰堆垃圾咧，唔係你哋睇嗰啲睇相嗰啲咧，好 colourful 咁樣。又綠色嘅蓋，又黃色嘅蓋，又紅色，即係唔係咁，係全部都好污糟啦，好多膠袋係灰色㗎啦，入邊好多泥沙咁樣。咁阿 Michael 就話，其實我哋執咗呢啲嘢出嚟，我哋而家可以點樣將佢transform 成為一個令到我哋去再思考我哋嘅行為啦、海洋啦同埋塑膠污染呢啲咁樣嘅一個關係咧。咁所以嗰個 session 咧就係成個 entire afternoon， 即係我哋執咗一個朝頭早，跟住就成個晏晝就喺度諗，哇！跟住咧啲同學就熬晒啦，我就想講，或者阿 Luke 或者 Teresa Lucas 都可以再 share 個 pattern， 我哋就整咗啲咩出嚟。咁但係咧嗰個 conversation 係好好嘅，係咪 share 緊啊 Lucas 同埋 Teresa？ 咦？點解我睇唔到？睇先，係咪我淨係我睇唔到？
係咪冇咗聲
？Sorry，我自己瞄咗我自己，對唔住。係啦，咁我可以我哋咧就有一個係咪法國定係德國留過嚟 exchange 嘅同學仔同埋 Andy，就好快諗咗，不如我哋整一個時鐘，咁咧就用呢一堆執出嚟嘅垃圾整個時鐘，就希望咧係嗰個時鐘一路行嗰陣時咧，嗰啲垃圾、塑膠垃圾會逐漸減少嘅。咁唔好意思啊，我啱啱呢個窗口有啲 alarm。而家會唔會可以 play 得到俾啲係啦，this is good 係啦。咁跟住咧嗰個時鐘嗰啲針咧，就係我哋自己同學仔嚟嘅，同埋嗰個時鐘嗰個 嗰個即係幾多點咧，都係你自己啲同學仔嚟。咁呢個係第一次嘅嘗試啦，當然唔係好似 Art Basel 啊，或者即係唔係真係咁 spectacular 啦，係啦。咁但係我哋就一齊諗咗一個咁樣嘅，我哋可以話叫做 installation 啦。咁而喺嗰個過程其實係2-3個鐘，啲同學仔就一齊對住嗰啲好唔開胃嘅海洋垃圾啦，一齊諗，哎呀死啦！原來執咗出嚟，仲要去諗呢壇嘢。最搞笑嘅咧就係我哋最後就執咗個單車上嚟，喺個海度撈咗個單車上，係啦。咁就成件事都好好魔幻嘅，即係因為咧嗰個單車執咗上嚟，我哋本來諗住攞去綠在區回收，咁但係太重啦，係啦，咁啊只係見到食環署嘅姐就話我哋送咗俾你啦，我哋都唔知點樣攞去回收。咁其實嗰個過程你就會發現就係有好多嘢其實回收唔到啦。我哋亦都嘗試去幫阿央係叫我哋幫手洗咗一啲樽啦，睇下可唔可以回收啦。咁其實有好多，最後咧都我估都唔係好多嘢可以回收得到嘅。咁所以阿央其實佢係講得好好嘅，就係我哋執嚟做乜嘢咧？如果我哋個間屋水浸，即係佢個比喻好好。如果你間屋水浸咧，你唔係應該去抹地啊嘛？你係應該去閂水喉嘛？咁你去 beach clean up， 你係咁執完，其實你冇去閂個水喉，咁你可以點樣去真係從源頭上去諗呢個問題咧？咁樣，咁我估嗰個係一個好大嘅 lesson， 或者可唔可以 share 我哋啲啲 brand auditing 啦？咁可能俾在座嘅觀眾都睇下啊，大家平時掉咗嗰啲嘢，其實係嚟自啲咩公司？我哋都會話翻俾佢哋聽嘅，係啦。其實係央所咁你會見到係啦，最出名嘅 Watsons 啦、Coca-Cola 啦，係啦、維他啦、康師傅啦、旺啦出前一丁，即係好多呢啲咁樣嘅大 branding， 佢哋可唔可以喺呢個
瞄咗啊？
對唔住，
聽唔到。
OK，不如我講到呢度先，因為我懷疑阿 Teresa 或者阿 Mars 都會可以再 come in 嘅，咁我將個時間交俾 Apple。
好啊 ，thank you 嘉明啊，我好開心今日可以嚟到呢一度啦，即係聽到嗰個成個項目嘅由來啦，點樣去發生，咁我覺得好得意啊，因為我哋大家本科真係好唔同，咁我哋睇嘅嘢、睇嘅出發點啊，都好唔同。咁啊，你頭先講嘅嘢，我覺得係好 reflective 嘅，同埋睇一件事，睇海洋發生嘅事，咁可能我會喺一個 scientist 嘅角度，咁我會超級理性咁樣去睇件事啦。我哋可以做啲乜嘢？咁但係當我哋好想帶俾大家反思嘅時候，其實我覺得好好咯，即係淨灘完之後嘅活動，其實係好令到大家會去認真去對待件事，同埋去反思。咁我好欣賞，好欣賞。好，咁咧今日啦，好開心，即係可以嚟藉住一個平台去同大家分享一下。我喺香港做緊嘅咩啦？咁我今日嘅主題想同大家講就係我係珊瑚修復師嚟嘅。咁我係Apple 啦。咁有啲人喺香港咧就會叫我做珊瑚爸媽。個原因咧就係因為我哋喺香港係會不斷去培育啲珊瑚，就係希望咧可以去修復香港之前破壞咗嘅珊瑚嘅群落。咁我唔知大家有冇潛水啦？咁大家做 beach clean up 其實真係一件好有意義嘅事啦。我好認同。屋企水浸，你究竟去閂水喉啊，定係去抹地嗰樣嘢？但係因為咧實在太多水啦，咁所以咧無論點樣咧都好啦，我哋閂水喉又好，點樣都好，我哋都一定要抹地嘅。咁所以咧，其實淨灘咧，其實係可以即刻幫我哋去解決一啲，即係例如垃圾卡住咗喺個珊瑚上面啊，或者影響到海洋生態嘅，可以即刻 呢頭嚟啱啱都見到有啲珊瑚俾一啲網卡住，係即刻可以去幫到手去舒緩翻呢個問題嘅事。咁所以雖然個感覺如果冇喺源頭嗰度處理，就好似一路做好徒勞無功咁，但係其實對海洋生態其實每一個呢啲 step 都好緊要。咁我細個嘅時候亦都有一個好深刻嘅一個故事，我諗大家都可能聽過，就係有一個小男孩喺個沙灘嗰度行嗰陣時咧，個水退得好低咁啊，好多海星擱淺咗之後咧，佢就將啲海星一隻執起之後抌落個水度啦。跟住有啲人就問啦，點解你要做呢樣嘢啊？你唔可以救到晒咁多海星㗎喎。咁佢就話啦，對於嗰粒海星，你就係做咗啲嘢去幫到佢。咁其實大家執海洋垃圾啦，其實都係好有意義，因為佢可能無端端就會俾海洋生物食咗粒土，咁之後可能佢就會生病啦，之後佢就會死。咁所以每一個 action 其實都係即係影響好好，即係會有帶到一個正面嘅效果。咁呢個就係香港啦，咁啊呢個真係喺香港個水底嗰度影。咁我哋香港好出名，我哋啲水好濁啊，咁啊好似所以成日咧睇唔到水底嘅靚。咁所以特登咧就我好中意俾條片大家，就係咧香港有時咧好水清嘅，一水清咧乜嘢都可以見到，你就會見到原來有一啲地方咧好多珊瑚，海洋生態個資源好豐富啦，好多可愛嘅魚啦喺度周嚟游嚟游去。而呢個咧真係我哋嗰個香港嚟。咁啊，香港當然有好多好靚嘅地方啦，但係今日我都迎合個主題啦，我就要講一啲破壞嘅嘢啦。咁其實咧喺同中大好近嘅啦，呢個就係香港東北面嘅赤門海峽啦，吐露港赤門海峽，咁中大喺呢度，圓洲仔都喺附近嘅。咁原來咧好多人唔知道嘅就係原來係早喺80年代初咧，其實我哋呢一個中大對出望個海域啊，吐露港赤門海峽，曾幾何時係有好多珊瑚嘅，70-80% 嘅珊瑚覆蓋率，講緊就係我頭先嗰條片差唔多就係70-80% 嘅覆蓋率。發生咩事咧？可能大家嚟到中大都唔會覺得我哋望出去會有好豐富嘅珊瑚群落啦，而的而且確我哋係冇嘅。而家原因發生咩事咧？就係因為咧當年咧新市鎮發展啦，填咗好多海啦，好多人住咗喺度。咁嗰陣時咧嘅污水排放咧個處理就做得唔係幾好，咁好多污水咧就排放咗出嚟呢個吐露港赤門海峽呢一度。咁啊，加上嗰陣時有啲畜牧業啊、工業嘅廢水都排晒落去。我哋以前咧有個好唔正確嘅諗法，就係大海真係好大，你乜嘢倒落去其實都會dilute咗，冇事啊，即係乜嘢都可以去到一個好低嘅水平，因為個海好大，可以稀釋咗佢嘅。咁但係咧，好明顯咧，喺我哋呢個 case 就唔得啦，因為咧呢個係一個比較內灣嘅地方咧，佢同大海接觸嘅層面咧，其實經海浪沖刷啊、潮汐漲退啦，我哋叫 flushing rate 啦，咁其實係好低。咁所以咧，你污染物喺嗰度咧，佢咧就唔係稀釋嘅，佢咧係累積嘅。咁所以咧就以至到咧幾年之間咧，就啲珊瑚咧就死晒啦。咁呢個其實係香港其中應該話係香港有史以嚟嘅第一個海洋生態大災難，嗰陣時係咁樣形容嘅。但係咧我自己都好 surprise， 因為當我做珊瑚研究啊好，當我去接觸香港嗰個海洋生態係好，我係從來都唔相信原來中大對出係有曾幾何時有咁多珊瑚。即使我嘅嗰陣時嘅教授，即係佢係我嘅supervisor，咁佢話俾我聽，我唔信啊，我 science、critical thinking 啊，我唔信，你俾 proof 我，咁跟住之後去睇翻啲文獻，先至知道原來有呢個 history，咁啊，所以我好中意用呢樣嘢去同大家分享。咁其實當時發生呢個災難性嘅即係 ecological disaster 之後咧，政府即刻做咗啲嘢嘅。咁佢做咗一個叫做吐露港行動計劃，係一個10年嘅計劃，就希望去改善翻破壞咗嘅，即係改善翻個水質啦。主要係好想扭轉翻嗰個水質，咁啊改善水質。咁啊呢個吐露港行動計劃過咗10年有多啦，你會見到咧嗰個污染物咧真係好明顯改善，所以真係放咗好多 effort 落去。咁但係自然本身就係咁噶啦，我哋成日講，因為我而家做好多珊瑚修復啦。點解要修復啊？你冇破壞，唔需要修復。你冇破壞大自然好好嘅，其實係好美好啦。咁但係就係因為破壞啦。咁但係破壞完之後，我哋第一件事要處理咗個源頭先啦。呢一個 case study 就係水體，即係水體污染，處理咗啦，10幾年過去啦。咁 大自然其實我哋係相信大自然有自己去修復自己嘅一個能力嘅，即係山火燒完啦個山，你唔需要即刻植樹，你可能要等一等，可能就會有啲樹苗自己生長。其實海洋生態都係一樣，咁我哋都好想俾啲時間睇下佢哋幾時啲珊瑚會翻嚟啊，去恢復翻。咁好可惜咧，我哋見到嘅咧就係即使個破壞嘅源頭改善咗20年啦，等咗20年啦，啲珊瑚都冇翻過嚟。咁所以個破壞真係好容易啊！你短短幾年就可以破壞晒，但係你之後咧要重新去俾大自然去修復翻自己係好困難，或者喺呢個時候即係見到呢個數據嘅時候，我哋覺得係冇可能可以發生到。咁去到呢個為一個咁好嘅前設啦，一個背景資料，我哋團隊就覺得我哋係時候要做啲嘢。咁基本上我哋其實同其他研究隊伍都一樣，即係有好多喺實驗室裏面做嘅嘢啦。咁我哋會test 啲 coral 啦，我哋好想知道香港珊瑚將來會唔會存活啊？我哋會做好多實驗啊，我哋都會做一啲生態調查啊，咁嘅嘢。咁但係對於我嚟講，可能真係土生土長嘅感覺就係好多時又或者我哋去做珊瑚研究，你自己喺個實驗室裏面，你可能研究咗好多嘢，但係我最唔想見到嘅就係當我研究完啦之後抬頭望翻出海嘅時候，就發覺珊瑚已經絕咗種啦，冇晒啦。咁所以我哋好希望做一啲好落地嘅 conservation 嘅嘢。咁我哋就喺度思考，咁我哋研究團隊，我哋係貢獻香港海洋生態保育，我哋角色係乜嘢嘅時候，我哋就覺得我哋有一個專長，就係其實當我哋做咗好多年研究嘅時候，其實我哋好掌握到我哋去繁殖培育珊瑚嘅一個技術。咁其實我哋平時咧就 stress test 佢，咁所以啲人話我係珊瑚媽媽，但係其實我係一個好 crazy 嘅媽咪，因為我不斷去俾好多壓力佢睇下佢嘅表現係點，咁所以咧我係一個虎媽嚟嘅，係啦，咁咧但係咧之後就諗其實我可以養大佢，即係真係去培育佢，長大咗其實我哋可以將佢攞翻落海去做一個珊瑚修復，就好似植樹咁。如果你真係好想做大規模嘅植樹活動，你第一件事你要嘅係乜嘢咧？其實你係要樹苗咯。咁但係喺香港其實世界各地都好，如果想做大規模珊瑚修復，你喺邊度攞到珊瑚咧？咁我哋喺香港，我希望處理一樣嘢就係我希望去繼續去研究珊瑚培育同埋繁殖技術啦，確保可持續同埋長期供應珊瑚去做珊瑚修復用途。當香港好需要嘅時候，我哋就去攞我哋培育嘅珊瑚攞出去做珊瑚修復啦。我哋點樣培育珊瑚嘅咧？其實有2個方法嘅，有一個咧就叫無性繁殖，一個叫有性繁殖。簡單一個比喻就好似，如果你想象喺一棵樹嘅時候咧，無性繁殖就係截枝法啦。你截咗枝條之後，就可以變翻一棵樹苗。咁如果有性繁殖，就可能要真係由精子卵子開始做起，咁比較複雜，同埋要時間嘅一樣嘢嚟嘅。咁截枝咁，當然我哋完全唔會鼓勵去個海度剝爛啲珊瑚，將啲珊瑚或者搬嚟搬去一啲受破壞嘅地方，因為呢個就違反咗珊瑚修復嘅原意，因為你破壞嘅一個地方。咁所以我哋點樣由無性繁殖去攞我哋珊瑚翻嚟咧？就係我哋會執一啲喺大海嘅碎塊，因為唔同嘅原因咧。自然、天然、人為都好啦，總之佢爛咗、碎咗、跌咗落水底嘅，佢哋咧本身喺個海床嗰度生活，個存活率會好低。咁我哋出去收集佢哋，咁其實係一個即係好，你當係 rescue 拯救咗佢哋翻嚟。咁我哋會切割佢哋啦，之後我哋就會俾一個底咗佢哋，就喺我哋中文大學生命科學學院個珊瑚培育基地嗰度啦，就等佢哋慢慢去變翻健康啲先，同埋長大啲，咁我哋就可以放落去。咁另外一樣嘢我哋好特別嘅咧，就係我哋暫時目前為止啦，喺香港係唯一一個隊伍真係去會 invest 落去有性繁殖珊瑚，因為呢個真係一個好大嘅 topic，要花好多 effort、人力物力之類時間嗰啲。咁我哋會做啲咩咧？珊瑚咧其實佢會生蛋啦，會產卵，1年1度嘅啫。你 miss 咗就冇噶啦，係好 risky 嘅。咁咧，我哋就會喺佢產卵嘅時候，我哋就收集佢啲精子卵子啦，之後攞到翻嚟中文大學個珊瑚，我哋個研究室嗰度啦，我哋就會幫佢受精啦，之後就會做成個 culturing process， 就養珊瑚 BB 啦，係啦，就會培育我哋嘅珊瑚 BB。咁呢啲 BB 咧其實好細嘅，佢一開頭係1mm 都唔夠，你可以想象1mm 係好細，即係原來珊瑚會細個嘅時候 ，BB 嘅時候得1mm。咁通常咁細咧，你攞翻出海咧，佢唔得嘅，佢太細啦，俾好多外在環境因素影響。咁所以我哋團隊試過好多唔同嘅 size 去放翻出海啦，咁最後我哋就都唔係好成功，咁所以喺有一年咧，我哋就同自己講唔得，我哋一定要做到為止，咁我哋就一次過咧花咗2年嘅時間去養大啲 BB，咁啊2歲大嘅佢哋咧就2-3 cm 左右啦，由1 mm 去到2-3 cm 左右，咁我哋就放出海，咁你會見到咧呢個有性繁殖其實要花好多功夫落去嘅，咁點解我哋都要做咧？咁就有少少簡單嘅 science 去同大家講啦。因為如果無性繁殖咧，其實有少少截肢法嘅感覺啊。咁其實你截嚟截去咧，其實都係嚟自同一個mother colony 嘅時候咧，即係話如果佢一嚿因為環境因素死咧，其實全部都會死，因為佢哋完全係一樣嘅 clone 嚟嘅。咁啊，我哋成日都話我哋做修復又好，點樣都好，我哋都要小心嗰個 genetic diversity 嗰個物種或者基因多樣性。如果高嘅時候咧，佢將來面對環境氣候變化，存活率會比較高嘅。咁所以係用呢一個方法，個唔好處咧，就係佢基因多樣性一定係偏低嘅，同埋咧佢好依賴我哋喺外面執珊瑚。咁如果當有一日出邊再執唔到珊瑚，咁我哋咪冇得做珊瑚嘅修復。咁所以呢個係一個問題要處理。但係佢好處咧就係你好簡單，你出去收集就得，咁又大，存活率相對高。咁珊瑚 BB 點解要做咧？就係因為佢基因多樣性真係好高，因為佢每一粒 BB 咧都係由獨立一個精子卵子去結合，就好似人咁，我哋每個人都有啲唔同嘅，咁啊，所以咧我哋希望有好 diverse 嘅 provide 個 diversity 啦，我哋就等 Mother Nature 大自然去選擇邊個可以留低，邊個留唔到啦。咁喺2019年咧，咁我哋就真係第一次即係養咗2年嘅 BB，咁就放落去吐露港赤門海峽做珊瑚修復嘅工作啦。咁當年咧，亦都種咗200個珊瑚嘅碎塊落去，係一個試驗嘅。其實你睇到好似好多咁樣，但係如果我哋話我哋要修復珊瑚成個生態，其實呢個係一個好細嘅數，所以對於我哋嚟講係一個 experimental scale 一個試驗嚟嘅。咁今日好開心啦，可以喺呢度藉住呢個 platform 都同大家 share， 我哋有3個好 major 嘅好 good news 去同大家 share。第一咧就係咧我哋有好高嘅存活率，差唔多90% 嘅珊瑚放出去，佢哋都係存活嘅。喺珊瑚修復嗰個 idea 裏面嚟講咧，係一個超級高嘅數。咁但係咧去到呢個位咧，我就唔會係啊，真係 good，但係咧唔係我哋做得好，因為珊瑚喺大海點解會存活啊？其實就係因為個大圍環境好咯，個環境好就應該會存活咯。所以講緊嘅就係吐露港赤門海峽政府做嘅10幾年嘅改善水質工程，其實真係有成效嘅。咁所以而家個環境係適合嘅時候，當我哋研究隊伍放出去嘅時候，佢哋係存活嘅。咁啊，好高嘅存活率。咁我哋放珊瑚，其實珊瑚又點止珊瑚咁簡單咧？即係樹木，你植樹又點止係嗰棵樹咁簡單？你植樹就好希望有翻個森林，造就翻個生物多樣性，變翻好似熱帶雨林咁，係珊瑚一樣嘅。咁所以我哋好希望睇到我哋珊瑚喺水度形成一個生態系統，即係一個環境去造就生物多樣性啦。咁所以咧好緊要，我哋會睇，例如會唔會有啲魚啊翻咗嚟。咁呢度你會見到海馬啦，唔係擺拍嚟，佢真係勾住喺我哋放出去嘅珊瑚嗰度，好開心。呢一個叫蝴蝶魚啦，呢個係特別開心，原因係海馬蝴蝶魚呢啲都係指標品種，佢係話俾你聽個水嘅珊瑚群落健唔健康。Butterfly fish 蝴蝶魚我哋從來都冇喺赤門海峽，即係我哋 restoration site 見過，從來都冇見過，因為佢係好同珊瑚好緊密關係，而嗰度都真係冇乜珊瑚剩嘅時候，你冇蝴蝶魚都好正常。但係當我哋放咗啲珊瑚落海2-3年之後咧，我哋開始見到蝴蝶魚。而家有2-3條左右啦，我哋都唔知點解佢會知道咯，因為我哋喺個島嗰度做珊瑚修復咁啊，好開心。第二樣好開心要同大家 share 嘅咧，就係大家記得啦，我哋放咗啲2歲大嘅 BB 落海嘅，咁3年之後咧，佢哋喺野外咧長大咗啦，咁佢哋產卵啦，咁呢個係好大事件嚟嘅，因為我哋講緊嘅係我哋希望將啲珊瑚放落海，佢哋應該要自己可以 sustain 到落去啊。即係佢可以產卵，即係話佢可以有珊瑚 BB 有機會喺嗰度地方去重新去生長嘅時候，呢個係好緊要嘅一件事，一個指標嚟嘅。咁我哋見到有少少成效啦，但係要再繼續去 keep 住做落去咁啊。但係呢個係一個 good sign 啊。 咁第三就係咩咧？咁佢產卵啦，咁我哋又收集佢啲精子卵子啦。咁樣所以咧，其實我哋第一代嘅珊瑚BB 咧，就係喺海洋公園嗰度去培育翻嚟啦。咁當我哋去放咗赤門海峽嘅時候咧，佢哋再產卵嘅時候咧，我哋再收集。其實我哋而家養緊第二代嘅珊瑚 BB， 要5年一代，5年一代。咁但係就好開心啦！即係其實講咗咁多，其實講緊就係咧個技術咧已經喺度噶啦。咁但係都係一啲研究嘅隊伍，即係我哋一個 research lab 少少 lab 大家去做嘅嘢。咁我哋點樣真係哇？我哋要修復香港嘅珊瑚群落咧，因為講緊嘅係套路講到好大啊。咁我哋得幾個人，我哋可以做啲乜嘢？咁所以咧 next step 一定係 scale up research。我哋嘅角色就係我哋要知道乜嘢 work，乜嘢唔 work。我哋揾到個 work 嘅方法，我哋叫大家一齊幫手。咁所以今年咧啱啱好開心。如果大家有睇新聞咧，就會見到中大咧同 WWF 香港啱啱簽咗個緊密合作協定。咁喺我哋嚟緊3年咧，我哋會一齊推出一個叫做山海無盡嘅珊瑚保育行動，係主要係好想修復翻吐露港赤門海峽之前破壞咗嘅珊瑚群落。咁裏面會有好多唔同嘅活動啦、公眾教育啦。咁我好開心可以 partner 住 WWF 一齊去做呢一樣嘢。咁與此同時啦，其實我研究隊伍，因為我哋好覺得我哋應該要俾多啲人知道香港發生咗咩事，同埋我哋好想大家都認識香港嘅珊瑚。咁所以喺2018年年尾，我哋 start 咗一個叫做珊瑚學院嘅外展教育活動啦。咁一出嘅時候，我哋好感激社會好多嘅支持啦，無論係政府啦、唔同團體啊、NGO 咁佢哋好 support。咁我哋partner 咗好多唔同嘅朋友啦，搞咗好多唔同嘅活動啦。咁喺過往4年，其實我哋就已經 reach 咗成30間中學啦，同埋過2萬位師生，咁都參加過我哋嘅唔同嘅活動啦。咁係好開心嘅一件事嚟嘅。咁喺當中啦，咁大家參加呢一個活動應該都有啲學生喺度啦。咁我都sell 一 sell 啊。咁我哋同政府啦、漁農自然管理處咧，咁我哋每年都會推出一個育養珊瑚校園計劃。咁我頭先講咗好多珊瑚繁殖培育嘅嘢啦。咁有一年開始，我哋就喺度諗其實中學其實都可以幫我哋養珊瑚喎。咁所以我哋而家就會幫一啲中學去設置一個珊瑚缸啦，之後就教嗰啲同學你點樣可以去養珊瑚咧？其實係好艱巨嘅工作嚟嘅。咁會 train 大家啦，之後俾大家體驗1年嘅養珊瑚啦，之後會有啲外展嘅教育活動啦，帶大家出去，例如玻璃底船去WWF 香港嗰度去睇啦。演説之後咧，最緊要咧就係啲珊瑚唔係 for 觀賞用途嘅，啲珊瑚咧係要俾我哋放翻落海，佢有 purpose 嘅，佢就係要貢獻翻喺珊瑚修復嗰度。咁所以最後咧，大家要還翻啲珊瑚翻嚟，我哋會一齊放翻去翻赤門海峽嗰度。咁呢個計劃已經4年啦，咁我哋嚟緊咧都會繼續去推出。咁另外啦，就如果你係有潛水牌嘅，咁你執完垃圾啦，你真係好想落水睇下喎。咁我哋有個青年珊瑚保育大使計劃，都係 ECF support 嘅。咁係一個大中學生落水一齊同我哋潛水，一齊感受嗰個海洋生態嘅一個好開心嘅一個活動嚟嘅。咁如果大家有興趣咧，你又可以去 explore 多少少啦，咁樣。我哋都有一啲教材啊，係如果你唔識潛水都唔緊要。咁我哋有啲 immersive 嘅，即係我哋有啲 VR 360嘅教材圖，咁教大家點樣做水體生態調查。咁我哋喺香港有啲好 heavily degrade 破壞嘅 site 就影一啲片段啦，喺一啲好靚嘅 site 都影一啲片段。咁如果大家咧都係一個教材圖嚟嘅，咁大家有興趣都可以去 approach 啦，咁可以 share 俾大家。咁最後啦，咁好多謝大家，即係好多謝今日大家喺度聽我嘅 sharing 啦。咁最後送呢張相俾大家，就係嗰一日咧就出咗海啦。咁做咗好多嘢。咁回程翻中大嘅時候啦，就向後望，咁啱就見到個 double rainbow 嘅彩虹。咁我自己本身有小朋友，咁所以我有睇卡通片，咁啲卡通不嬲都話彩虹個盡頭會有寶物啊。咁呢個好感動，就因為佢落呢一個地方就係我哋珊瑚修復嘅地方，珊瑚就係大自然俾我哋嘅禮物啦。咁所以係好中意呢一個。咁所以係啦，呢個係我嘅資料啦。咁我團隊好細。好少嘅團隊，但係大家都好 passionate，即係我好愛我嘅成個 team 嘅。咁所以係咧，如果你有興趣想知多啲，可以去唔同嘅 social media platform 去揾我哋啦。咁我就 email 到響度。好，thank you。
非常之多謝Professor Shui 嘅分享。咁我哋而家邀請 之前參與淨灘活動嘅同學 Andy 幫我哋做一個簡單嘅分享啦，多謝。
Thank you, Apple, for sharing the call, and Teresa. So thank you, coming, and Nokos for inviting me here for a student sharing. I may first start from the Padlet. Okay. So wait for a while. Okay, can you see this Padlet? Yes, so where did this story begin? I first learned about this event of CUSIS, I think in last January. So I also love the art activities, and I enjoy explore different people and art activities. So I registered without second thoughts. So it turned out to be a quite transforming experience to me. So always keep track of your social media and never miss the events of Social Innovation Center. Yeah, so the day we went to the beach cleanup, the site was in Yuanzhoucai in Taipo. So we first arrived at this perfect place for us to do this kind of beach cleanup. There is a helipad, so you can see a very good place for us. And what we saw that day was also many interesting creatures and people there. Like we saw many egrets, and our instructor Jans just introduced the mangrove for us. Like the mangrove is a community of unique shrubs, and there are some small trees in specifically tropical area. As it grows on coastal and brackish water, there are some waste maybe stuck in this site. So this is a good place for us to do a beach cleanup. Yeah, and this place around Yuanzhoucai is also interesting. As you can see, there are temples and there are parks. So very beautiful cultural ecology for us to experience beyond this kind of beach cleanup. So the whole morning we spent our time collecting waste into different groups and areas. And I was assigned into the A group, and as you can see, we collected many waste, especially the plastic bottles and some food packages. So as Kami has introduced, there are many brands as we can see. So among these plastic bags and empty food packets, we learned many brands we may often see, like Watson and Coca-Cola. So what kinds of this is important because we think brand audit is an important section in this beach cleanup, because we can have feedback and can urge the corporates to take some social responsibility and so on and so forth. So totally our beach cleanup turned out to be so successful that the results has been recorded by Jens in her beach cleanup, the whole record in her own event. So as you can see, there are many collected by her, and I think in the future we'll also hold events on the mountain sides. So not just coastlines, but also at mountains and hillsides. Yeah, so there are some students sharing that day. So not only about collecting waste, but kind of a social community building. And we can click this video and see what they have said.
部都喺個寫 background 喎。咁我啲group 名咧都係咁執咯，執一大堆，跟住我又瘋狂寫，我都寫唔切咁樣啦。咁因為我主要都係 background 啊嘛，咁我就覺得即係寫嗰陣咧，特別係啱先讀咗好長嘅嘉賓 list 咧，嗰張咧就係我寫㗎。咁都見咗好多嘅特邀嘉賓嘅名啦，咁跟住都見識咗好多唔同嘅嘢，都睇到好多熟悉嘅嘢。咁以後自己咧食嘢嗰陣都會注意翻，都唔會亂咁掟落手。係咯，咁係咯，咁仲有特別另外一件今日就係比較震驚嘅事，就係阿央落去拖翻部單車落去啦，唔係拖翻部單車上落去啦，唔係屌，係咯，咁因為我唔係你落去之前咧，我都冇留意到下邊有部單車嘅，咁我都覺得好神奇，唔知佢點解會俾劈咗喺嗰度啦，因為照計風都唔會將佢出去嗰度啦，咁但係都會俾你留意到，跟住仲要落翻去拖翻上去咯，我又覺得你好勁。
人為應該係有人抌落去。
就咁多咯，多謝大家。
我叫 Michelle， 咁咧今朝早盛攤嘅時候咧，咁我哋就喺嗰個附近嗰度啦。咁呢度見到好大棵樹啦，其實佢個樹根嗰個位置咧，有一個地方咧係擲住咗一啲嘅魚網嗰啲咁樣嘅。咁其實就令我諗到，其實我哋喺附近掉嗰啲垃圾咧，就會覺得咦咁個垃圾喺度咪喺度咯。咁但係其實會影響咗成個生態，即係一啲樹木在嗰啲再生長嘅時候，可能佢就會潛咗啲垃圾啊咁樣。咁其實咧只會令到你附近個位置嗰啲垃圾越嚟越多啦，同埋亦都會影響佢哋嗰啲生長啊，或者佢哋附近有好多紅雀仔，佢哋可能會食咗都唔定咁樣。咁所以就係咯，咁下次出去嘅時候，如果自己由自己開始做先啦，或者可以喺 IG 嗰度宣傳下自己垃圾自己帶到會更加好，就咁多。
Okay, thank you, locals, for playing this video. So, as one of our students introduced that, there are also many happenings and beyond this kind of clean up. As we can see, this is kinds of happening and sociology. Like our instructor Yang, she picked up with the OFO by under the shallow water, and all these our groups of people were just watching her and offering her help. And during this kind of beach cleanup, our artist Michael also had interesting communications with just people around this helipad, because there are many tourists and people hiking there. So we connected a good connection with him and let them see that our artwork building. So next, I will introduce our social sculpture art making. So during I was joining this event, I also took the course in my cultural studies course called Contemporary Art and Cultural Activities. So as you may not be aware of what is social sculpture, I think social sculpture is not like those artifacts and sculptures in museums and in galleries. It can be everywhere, everything, and you can own it in your own way. So that is how we made this kind of waste into valuable art and sculpture. So during this process, our group mates, we started first as kind of like there's some small circles, like build a clock. There's an exchange student whose name is Jue, and she has the idea of like making a small no plastic sign. So seeing that we're not allowed to place waste here. So as you can see, and later we are inspired by Jue's idea of this complex sign, and we enlarged this circle and expanded it into a larger clock. And it suddenly occurred to us that why not our bodies become part of this art? So as you can see, we all have like 17 people. And the slash line is composed of like black bottles and waste we collected under the seaside, and the circle is all made by plastic bottles, and 17 people involved, and 3 people played the hour hand, and 2 people played the 3 people played the minute hand, and 2 people played the hour hand. So the whole sculpture is made under this kind of helipad, and our artist Michael's John has captured this whole view. So that's made this final work. As you can see, he made a beautiful GIF, so circling around like a time clock. And I'm quite curious about what you think about this, and maybe you can share your idea with us in this QA session. Yeah, because we have this kind of working clock open to rich interpretations. Yeah, so finally, I want to introduce my thoughts about how this kind of beach cleanup changed my life. So exactly, as you may ask. So before this beach cleanup, I used to like use this kind of online shopping services with too much over packaging, like plastic bags. Like, have you ever brought things from YUU? So they will overpack that with a lot of plastic bags. So after that beach cleanup, I was more sensitive and more engaged in this kind of eco-awareness. So during my shopping in the supermarkets or markets in Hong Kong, I bring my own bags, and I often recycle and reuse the bags for second use. And the third one is more interesting because I engage myself in more eco activities thanks to its inspiration from this beach cleanup. As you can see, there are many film screening organizations and some factories turning plastics into useful materials. They are all participating in this kind of activities. And later on, also participating in CUSIS market research in Shatin market. So also about the use of plastics and how we can improve our awareness of plastics. And finally, I also engage more of my friends and people around me and have my influence on them. So the whole process is like it will all happen in thousands if we can change in little moments. Yeah, and that's what I want to share with you, that how can a small event can change our life. Yeah, and feel free to share your idea about our art in the QA session. Thank you.
好多謝 Andy 嘅分享，係咁啱啱喺 Andy 嘅分享嗰度，我諗大家都聽咗好多關於我哋活動嘅內容啦，同埋 Andy 個人嘅一啲參與嘅感受同埋得着。咁我哋接下來就係一個 open floor 嘅 Q&A session 啦。又或者Professor Wu 同埋 Professor Choi 有啲咩想再補充嘅都非常之歡迎啊。Andy 都係啊，如果有啲咩覺得想再補充嘅都歡迎隨時 jump in。
我建議咧，即係我都明白有 Q&A 咯。建議好多參與嘅朋友咧，可以喺個chat box 嗰度開始問啦。但係咧，因為我哋咁難得咧請到阿 Apple 嚟咧，其實我可唔可以真係用呢個機會去聽多啲 Apple 對於我哋呢個活動嘅一個 evaluation， 即係真係唔使客氣嘅。你覺得我哋呢啲活動好廢係冇問題嘅，係啦。但係咧，我仲想再問多啲，就係話，其實或者咁講啊，調翻轉就係，除咗我哋嘅活動，你點樣 evaluate？ 你或者你覺得點樣可以再推進啊？另外就係，譬如你想我哋文科嘅同學仔點樣幫去你嗰個珊瑚學院嗰個 effort 咧？我哋可以做咩？因為我哋可以做 art， 我哋可以做 storytelling， 我哋可以做 music， 我哋可以做digital media， 即係我哋 what can we help to contribute？ 咁我估呢個係我真係好想聽 Apple 分享，多謝晒。
Yes， 多謝你嘉明。我覺得 依個就係完完全全大家個背景好唔同，所以出嚟個效果會好唔一樣。我好中意你哋做一個 beach clean up，因為其實好多人都有搞 beach clean up 啊。咁就係可能對於一啲例如我哋呢啲 group 啦，我哋去搞，我哋好想攞數據啊。咁啊，例如我哋攞數據翻嚟就可以有好多資料啦，之後我哋就可以同唔同嘅持份者講啦，之後可以 drive 到一啲change 啦，可能喺 policy 上面啊，去 for communication。但係其實咧，即係讀生物啊嗰啲係一啲好嗰啲 science 係一啲好理性嘅科目嚟，然之但係我頭先聽你哋咧就有好多 sharing。咁我諗對於我哋嚟講一個 program。如果俾我去搞，我可能個重點全部會擺晒喺執垃圾。即係如果係喺你呢個 approach，我重點執垃圾。然住之後，我可能會 debriefing 一定要嘅。咁但係咧可能15分鐘之後就完咗啦咁樣。但我好欣賞嘅就係你花咗好多時間喺之後嘅後續嗰樣嘢。咁我亦都相信呢個係因為大家唔同專業，大家嘅 expertise 唔同。咁都好，我好 touching 嘅，因為即係對於我嚟講，我點樣 gain feedback 咧？咁可能好多時都係 do questionnaires，然之後大家就填咗啲字俾我然之後我就咁樣，好似好尷尬，成日問人哋你覺得點啊？咁我覺得好好，因為即係見到啲同學自己去講自己嘅感受，好多情感啊，成件事可以好人情味啊，成件事咁，同埋你啲嘢好靚嘅啲 media。啲相又好靚，好 attractive 啊！我覺得正就係因為呢樣嘢，大家好擅長嘅嘢好唔同，但係都好緊要。咁所以我就會即刻喺度諗啦。哎呀，我頭先講我哋例如我哋搞一啲潛水活動啊嗰啲嘢嘅時候，我就即刻諗如果我一開頭早啲同你哋 part 啦咁樣，咁你哋就可以幫我後續嘅嘢啦，就即係可以加強同埋。holistic 啲啦，去即係我哋都係好想 drive behavioral change， 但係其實你係有好多嘢先可以 drive 到 behavioral change。咁我覺得好緊要啦，你哋而家做緊嘅嘢係啊。
多謝晒 Apple 啊，你真係好客氣啊！嗱，你下一次合作一定要揾我哋啦，你就記住唔好唔記得咗我哋。我而家有少少，因為時間關係，Teresa 你會唔會想回應下個 chat box 嗰啲嘅個朋友？
我見到係咪我自己嚟啊？
好啊
Yes， 我見到有個同學仔就問如果有石頭或者死咗嘅 coral 骨、死咗嘅珊瑚骨，如果喺個海度執咗上嚟，可唔可以變成一個 artwork？ 咁我哋其實咧。嗱，我 get 到個 idea 係好好嘅。呢個同學仔係英文嘅，係咪有即時英文傳譯啊？
其實我係可以廣東話嘅，只係我打字方便。
我就喺度諗，係咪要講轉一轉
language 先？我想問下咧，其實我自己個樣係邊我都唔知，係啦。我想問下咧，其實嗰個。即係你睇做呢一個珊瑚嘅整個保育嘅情況，即係頭先聽你講啦，你其實係會執一啲翻去再養咁樣啦，係咪㗎？我冇 get 錯。咁其實喺執嘅即係喺嗰個執嘅過程之中啦，其實係咪都會執到啲譬如死咗啊，或者係一啲其他，即係應該會執到其他嘢。
係啦，呢個咧就牽涉到喺 ecology 即係生態或者環境保育一個好緊要嘅 concept 啦，就係我哋係唔會即係我哋個 core concept 就係嗰啲 belongs to nature 嘅嘢，我哋唔會攞走佢嘅，因為咧你頭先即係呢個就牽涉到大家唔同專業啦，咁所以我喺度 share 就好好啦。咁咧因為咧我完全 get 到你嗰個問題嗰個原因，咁嗰個原意係好嘅，但係咧其實咧如果我哋再諗真少少，石頭啦或者死咗嘅 coral， 其實對於我哋嚟講可能係一啲死物啦，但係其實對海洋生物嚟講，可能嗰啲真係佢住緊嘅屋企啊，即係有啲海洋生物係會轉咗落去啲石頭 或者轉咗落啲珊瑚骨裏面喺裏面住嘅，咁所以其實佢都係一個棲息地嚟嘅。咁所以呢一個就係啦，所以我哋就會好小心，即係例如我哋做 artwork 可能我哋就會我哋攞垃圾沖咗上岸嘅一啲死物嚟做啦。咁如果喺海嗰度，如果我哋知道係一啲人嘅即係 man-made 嘅 structure，咁我哋會執上嚟，咁嗰啲都可以攞嚟做一啲 artwork。但係如果係牽涉到一啲真係大自然 resources 嘅嘢咧，我哋會留翻佢喺大海啦。係。
明白。
Thank you。
我都想講呢個係一個好重要嘅觀點咯，即係我估其實我哋而家就算喺人文學科去做 artwork， 都開始諗多啲係用 recycle material， 就唔係用一啲原生嘅 material。咁Apple 講嗰個即係我估喺大自然嗰個即係嗰個 ecology 就更加複雜啦，即係我哋點樣可以唔好去係啦 intervene 到一個
yes
到去啊
yes。
我唔知道仲有咩問題喺個 floor， 我哋希望同學仔或者 Teresa、Mark 同埋 Lucas 如果有問題都趁住呢個機會喺度問到 Apple 啦。但係我就好想好快回應一下 Apple 嗰個 presentation， 真係好 impress 啊！其實因為我第一次聽，即係我睇嗰啲無線嗰啲咧係好短噶嘛，係啦。咁所以我都好 impress， 同埋我都未聽過你講嗰個香港嘅第一次嘅生態災難嘅。咁我呢個都好值得去寫啦，其實。咁而我亦都唔知道，原來係因為我哋新市鎮嘅發展啦，令到成個赤門峽嘅珊瑚咧係死晒嘅。咁所以我有一個問題咧，好快咁問咧，就係話，咁其實隨住海水氣溫上升，即係而家其實呢幾日嘅新聞都係啦，咁同埋我都話俾大家聽，我而家喺北京咧，其實係40度嘅，咁係好恐怖嘅，其實係。咁其實你咁樣去救珊瑚啦，但係會唔會其實佢就算生咗 BB， 但係佢因為珊瑚以我所知係佢對水嘅氣溫係好 sensitive， 佢會唔會其實都係頂唔順咧？所以呢個第一條問題。咁第二條問題就係即係我哋做呢，即係而家譬如香港嘅呢個 plastic pollution 其實係咪相對係即係你喺海度去觀察係相對係少嘅咧？我都想知道。
OK， 好得意啊！你問嘅呢個問題好緊要，即係成個大衞環境都唔好嘅情況底下，我哋點樣去堅持落去咧？基本上呢個係我好早期去接觸珊瑚，仲係學生時代嘅時候，我好記得我嗰陣時去咗一個外國嘅會議，嗰陣時係喺over 10年前嘅啦，咁嗰陣時就喺泰國，咁嗰陣時咁啱就係佢哋一個好大規模嘅珊瑚白化。咁我第一次潛落水，本身應該係好色彩繽紛嘅，但係全部變晒白色嘅，剩翻嘅就係好色彩繽紛嘅魚啫。咁之後我亦都去睇當地啲人嘅珊瑚修復嘅工作啦，佢哋有一個育養嘅平台，佢哋唔係擺喺陸地嘅，佢哋喺個海嗰度，即係佢哋唔係 indoor，佢哋喺個水嗰度。之後嗰啲人就話俾我聽，佢哋話係啊，佢哋之前白化咗，但係佢好翻啊咁樣。但係咧，我哋 scientist 去睇咧，我就睇到其實佢已經死咗咯，死咗之後有啲 algae， 有啲藻生咗上面。咁其實成件事好 sad。咁嗰陣時仲係好細個，我就即係喺啲。因為係個 conference，international conference， 我好記得係一個好大嘅老細去做 sharing 嘅時候，我就問咗佢一個問題：有啲乜嘢值得我哋呢啲年輕嘅去堅持落去咧？即係好唔掂喎，咁樣點樣做 lifelong career？咁佢就話佢就講咗一句就話只要珊瑚唔放棄，我哋都唔可以放棄。咁之後其實我諗嗰陣時對於我嚟講都好大反思嘅，即係其實我而家再 involve 多啲嘅時候，其實我哋知道嘅一個事實就係個大衞環境一定會變 ，climate change、global warming， 我哋講緊嘅係個程度會有幾嚴重，係一定會發生㗎啦。咁佢會導致嘅嘢就係例如有啲地方，例如珊瑚係好 sensitive to environmental change， 所以我哋而家越嚟越聽得多珊瑚白化啦，大規模死亡啦。咁所以其實珊瑚修復，如果我哋個問題處理唔到咧，我哋不斷做咧，其實係冇用嘅。咁但係點解我哋要做咧？就係第一就係 buy time 啦，即係我哋都要做啊！我哋唔可以等到所有嘢處理咗，我哋先至開始去做，因為嗰陣時可能已經太遲啦。咁呢個有少少係個 係有少少衝突嘅，即係你未處理好晒，但係你要做，咁好似不斷 lost resources 咁，咁所以就要做得有智慧，咁所以呢啲就係一啲scientific knowledge 要 input 嘅地方，咁我哋要開始做啦，我哋因為即係我哋同時間競賽緊一樣啦，咁同時間我哋都要呼籲政府啊碳減排啊，全部都要做啦。因為如果佢哋唔做，我哋唔會 work 㗎，我哋啲嘢。咁喺 science 嘅角度，我哋都諗緊點樣可以令到啲珊瑚 tough 啲啊。咁所以我哋都會喺 science 界其實都好 crazy。我哋諗緊所有嘅方法可以 enhance coral 嘅 resilience， 令到佢哋嗰個抗壓力啊，或者佢面對壓力之後恢復嘅能力會高啲。而一樣都幾 potential 見到曙光嘅就係即係我哋。每個人都好唔同啦，珊瑚即係珊瑚都可以好唔同啦。咁有時我哋喺外國發生大規模珊瑚白化死亡嘅時候，就係嗰個半杯水個道理，即係我哋話珊瑚我哋冇咗一半啊，全世界嘅 coral reef 冇咗一半，但係我哋仲有一半留低啊。咁嗰一半係點解佢可以留低到咧？即係我哋喺同一個地方，有啲珊瑚死咗，有啲冇死到。同一個品種嘅喎，點解咧？咁我哋就好想去 study 佢哋，知道去了解佢哋點解佢會冇事嘅，人哋死晒佢冇事嘅咧。咁呢個就係一啲 genetic diversity 嘅嘢。咁我哋亦都喺度 study 緊，我哋希望 study 完之後我哋學到啦，咁我哋就可以去幫其他珊瑚，因為佢會有個機制啦。咁呢個係 science 嘅 research wise 啊。咁另外我哋都喺全世界要揾一啲地方係可能佢將來氣候變化又或者冇咁嚴重嘅 heat 得，又或者本身已經係 select 咗嘅一啲地方。我哋而家講緊係例如珊瑚個分佈其實幾廣嘅，我哋揾緊一啲比較 extreme 嘅 environment，即係例如其實香港係一個幾得意做珊瑚研究嘅地方咧，就係香港其實我哋唔係一個好合適珊瑚生長嘅地方，我哋叫佢做一個 marginal environment。珊瑚生得最好嘅就係熱帶地方啦，大堡礁啊、菲律賓啊、泰國嗰啲。咁香港本身唔係好合適，因為我哋本身嗰個全年嗰個溫差好大，我哋冬天可以凍到13-14度水，夏天咧喺個水可能去到30-31度。咁對於我哋嚟講，我哋好凍啊，咁就着衫啦；好熱啊，咁就去第呢啲地方。但係珊瑚 always 都浸喺個水度，咁佢就要經歷去受得住嗰個溫度嘅溫差。咁所以其實我哋就會希望喺世界各地揾一啲好特別嘅地方去睇下啲 coral， 可能因為佢哋一路以嚟都係咁 natural selection 已經 select 咗佢哋係比較 tough tolerant 嘅 coral， 咁所以我哋就而家都好多 study 去揾緊呢啲地方啦，或者揾緊呢啲珊瑚啦。咁我哋香港我哋都做緊好多study 啦，咁同埋我哋希望做 breeding 嘅時候可以 selectively 咁 breed 啦，即係好似我哋人類好中意 selective breed 啲嘢噶嘛，即係啲魚啊，有啲好靚啊，啲 traits 啊，咁我哋都可以喺 coral 嗰度做到。個目的真係希望令到即係我哋知道大圍環境會轉變，我哋點樣可以幫到個大自然，係啊。sorry， 第二樣嘢就係 plastic pollution， 緊唔緊要？我去過一啲，即係我喺香港好多唔同地方潛水啦。咁我真係去過一啲地方係從來都見唔到有垃圾嘅，好靚嘅。但係香港其實每次落水都一定會見到有垃圾嘅。咁唔執咗佢咧，每次去到佢都喺嗰度噶啦，就 always 都喺嗰度。同埋我諗我覺得香港個社會氣氛其實係好好，尤其是近呢幾年開始例如啲強颱風啊，之後啲垃圾湧晒上嚟啊，或者多咗關注 WWF Hong Kong 又做咗好多 campaign，好多政府亦都有好多 grant 去 support local 大家自己 initiate 執垃圾淨灘嘅活動啊，或者郊野公園啊。其實成個社會氣氛係好咗好多，多咗好多關注。但係都係嗰句啦，即係如果唔處理個源頭，其實垃圾係執唔完嘅。但係垃圾都仲要執，因為你唔執佢一路都喺嗰度。咁所以兩方面都要做咯。咁所以嚴唔嚴重嘅問題咧？咁對唔同嘅海洋生物個嚴重嘅程度係唔同嘅。咁我哋而家講緊嘅海洋垃圾，我哋講得最大問題都係啲塑膠嘅問題啦，因為佢落咗海就 always 都喺嗰度啦。咁你以為佢會分解到啦，但係其實佢只不過又變咗微塑膠啦。咁微塑膠又係近年嘅 hot topic， 因為我哋未知道微塑膠個影響可以去到幾遠啊。咁之前例如 Greenpeace 啊嗰啲都有做到，就係例如喺水度原來飲用嘅水有微塑膠啦，喺人類嘅糞便度都有 有微塑膠啦，微塑膠好似度度都有，咁佢嘅 effect 會係幾多？係乜嘢咧？咁所以有好多嘅喺 science 裏面都有好多 unknown 喺裏面啊，咁啊，所以喺 science 嘅角度 ，scientist 要 study 啦，即係我哋要知道個 effect 係去到邊，對唔同海洋生物 effect 係邊，對人類影響係點。但係當然最緊要就係我哋即係要源頭減廢，跟住同埋我哋都要幫手清走已經係個大自然嘅垃圾啦。
多謝晒你 Apple。我估時間嘅關係咧，我又見唔到有好多人舉手，我就 take the advantage， 我自己係個 speaker 啦，我就 wrap up 啦。因為首先咧，我就想同 Apple 講，你頭先話如果早知你上一次嘅活動，咁你有下一次活動噶嘛？
有啊，
咁知道咗我哋啦，咁你可以揾我哋啦。咁但係咧，其實咧，我想講，我知道即係我前幾年啦，知道 Stanford 咧有一個Institute of Humanities and Digital Media 咧。佢哋係幫一個呢個 Pacific Coast 嗰個地方咧嘅政府咧做咗個 virtual reality 嘅片啊，咁咧就係等啲學生咧帶咗個 VR 嘅 goggles 之後咧，佢去睇晒成個 Pacific Coast 嗰個嘅coral reefs 個 bleaching， 即係頭先你講個白化，咁係做得好好嘅，好到係。嗰啲人睇完嗰啲片之後咧，佢喊晒出嚟，即係佢冇諗到啊，原來係咁樣嘅。咁譬如我哋可唔可以幫你做翻嗰個70、80年代嘅香港生態大滅絕、生態大滅絕嘅 virtual reality 咧？咁可能咧都係一個我唔知啊，即係我而家純粹喺度吹水。不過即係我估 Arts and Humanities 點樣去幫到喺呢個事情上，而尤其是而家科技咁先進嗰陣時候，我哋點樣可以令到嗰個 awareness 啊、behavioral change 同埋 policy 嘅 changes？ 咁我估我哋希望都有一個 role。
好啊，我需要，好需要啊！
好啊，咁Teresa 交翻個咪俾你先。
非常之多謝今日Professor Choi、Professor Wu 同埋 Andy 嘅分享啦。咁正如啱啱講到，即係當我哋間屋水浸啦，即係我哋面對住氣候嘅變化啦、全球升溫啦，同埋塑膠污染，咁係啦，間屋水浸啦。咁無論我哋生水喉同埋抹地咧，兩樣嘢都好重要嘅咁樣。咁亦都正如我哋即係回顧翻，即係正如啱啱 Andy 所分享嘅，喺活動期間 Jens 同埋 Michael Leung 佢哋嘅分享，亦都係 both address 咗一個 structural problem， 同埋我哋點樣嘗試係去。正如 Professor Wu 所講 ，engage 唔同嘅同學喺佢哋嘅生活入面咧，既 aware 到我哋 structural 嘅問題，就係政府佢有角色啦，商家佢有角色啦 ，that's why 我哋有 brand audit 啦。咁係啦，咁然後咧，我哋每一個人咧都有我哋自己嘅 agency 係可以喺我哋嘅生活嗰度咧做一啲嘅改變嘅。亦都非常之多謝今日咁多位係啦，關心香港嘅自然生態啦，關心全球自然生態嘅朋友咧，就係過嚟出席我哋呢一個講座嘅。咁咁如果我哋日後仲有啲係歡迎大家繼續瀏覽我哋Centre for Social Innovation Studies 啦、Centre for Cultural Studies 啦，同埋 Coral Academy 嘅相關嘅 social media platform， 仲有網頁。咁有啲咩問題咧，都可以 through 我哋呢幾個主辦方嘅聯絡渠道咧，係繼續揾翻我哋嘅。期待日後我哋嘅活動嗰度再見到大家。
多謝晒，同埋再一次恭喜 Apple 攞到呢一個即係頭先你講個 MOU 啦，同
係啊 ，yes
係咯。咁同埋我哋都即係多謝阿譚佳教授喺度，因為多謝佢撮合我哋，可以話喺呢個 topic 上 science 同埋 arts and humanities 咧都有一個初步嘅對話咧，希望look forward to 之後嘅 collaboration。好，咁對不起各位同朋友，我哋今日端午節，祝大家端午節快樂！多謝你哋都參與嘅。咁我哋就係Apple，我哋之後約食飯。咁多謝晒。